Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Sam's Healing Podcast. You know me, I'm Sam, but today we have one of the greatest privileges of my podcasting career. We have a new friend of mine by the name of John Lee, who has written a book, Growing Yourself Back Up, which is, in my opinion, a must read for anybody who's been unfaithful or who's been betrayed. John, I said this off camera. I cannot thank you enough. I am incredibly honored. I might even say the word giddy that you would come into our little hodgepodge podcast and visit with me. So thank you.
You're welcome, bud. Thank you for having me. And it turns out we're neighbors here in Austin, you know, where I've been. That,
I haven't ever been a stalker, but I'm considering it because I realize you live close to me.
I told somebody the other day, Sam, I said, you know, back when my first books came out, I said, one of the ways you knew that you were kind of successful is you had stalkers. and I said, you know, I don't really want another stalker, but it would signal that I'm still out there and relevant, you know. So maybe somebody listening here, well, show up on my porch.
Yes, I'll give you one of mine, and I'll give you a couple of haters too, and then you'll really feel like you're in the prime time. Yeah. So you that are listening and watching, let me just tell you some of the pedigree of John Lee. He is an expert in the field of self-help, anger, codependency, and relationships, not to mention an expert in men and women's issues. He is known as a therapist to therapists. He's been doing this over 35 years. He has workshops. He's been on tour speaking. John, you've written over 25 books. None of them, I'm sorry, will ever surpass the impact of growing yourself back up on my life. You are a best-selling author. You have been featured. This is incredible. You've been featured on Oprah, 2020, Barbara Walters, The View, CNN, PBS, and NPR, and Sam's Healing Podcast. So your career is flourishing.
Yes.
And you are going viral by just coming into this little podcast here today. So maybe as just an own point of disclosure, why don't you tell everybody more about yourself? What did I not cover? What are you most proud of? And then we'll be off and running.
I'm most proud of being a pretty good friend to several people. I'm most proud of going through a divorce, most amicable divorce that could possibly, and be best friends with that person. We divorced about 12 years ago. I take great pride in saying that, we're still best friends. And I'm proud of, the work I've done. One of the things that I'm most proud of was my association with these incredible men that changed my life. There's a man here that was a partner with me in our training program named Dan Jones. He's passed. Robert Bly and I taught many workshops and conferences together. And his friendship and mentoring was probably one of the greatest gifts of my life. So, awesome. And I'm a great dog daddy. That's the other thing.
Well, I have my moments with dogs, but I don't want to turn this into a session today, John. So I'm going to read part of your book in just the introduction. And any of my clients that are watching right now are like, here goes Sam, because I read this to them because it's a beautiful statement of what regression, which is going to be the cornerstone of what we talk about today. Because if you're a betrayed, or if you're an unfaithful, or you're both, we can guarantee you that you are regressing and you probably don't even know it. But from your own words, I don't know that you could have written it any better than this, John, but it says regression is what happens to us when emotionally we leave the present moment. By contrast, staying present with your partner, your boss, your children, your friends, and your colleagues means that emotionally you are in the here and now, and that a small part of you is neither wandering over the hills and valleys of your past or trying to predict the future. When we regress, we go from being clear-thinking adults to talking, acting, and sometimes even looking like children who are not getting their way. We feel powerless and out of control, as if we don't have choices. What does regression look like in relationships? What does it look like for us as an individual when we're fighting with our partner, or we're flooding, or we're going through intrusive thoughts and we are off to the races? What does it look like from the man who has written this book that has changed lives understanding it?
Well, it looks usually pitiful, is what it looks like, and it sounds pitiful. Well, last year you said blah, blah, blah. No, I didn't. You said blah, 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 and now we're two kids out of the playground. You took my ball. No, I didn't, And how old are you two folks right now talking? We'll both be 46 next year. Regressed people rage. That's a big, big part of regression. Adults who are in present time can express their anger or upsetness or frustration in moments or minutes, and then we're good to go. Regressed people rage, and they could go on for hours and hours and hours and still not move the ball down the field. It's still, we didn't get any resolution. Regressed people rage, and rage equals distance, disaster, and divorce. Now, distance in your area of expertise means I'm out of here and I'm looking for someplace else, somebody else. Disaster, people, when they're talking about divorce, most of them are thinking like a 15-year-old, and they're yelling at each other and screaming at each other. And then regression and rage together usually does equal divorce.
Right.
And so, it looks kind of and sounds kind of silly, I'm sad to say. But, how this started, Sam, is I had to look at how regressed I was, as a young man, as a professor, and then early on in my psychotherapy practice. And I used to say I would have a TMM, a temporary moment of maturity. And the rest of the time, I was either in a regression, coming out of a regression, or going back in a regression.
Right.
And that's when I got it. And I thought, what? I got to study. I got to try to be more present, more adult. And so I tore into it. Boy, I read everything, what little there was.
Yeah, right.
And came up with this book. If you'll hold that picture up, cover again. There's the true picture of regression right there. A little girl in a full adult suit, and it doesn't fit very well.
You're exactly right. When it was explained to me, my great friend and co-host of our other podcast, Ask the Unfaithful, I owe it to him because he had me read the book, and then I've been handing it to everybody I can. He said, regression makes us feel like we don't have a choice.
Yeah.
And for me, one of the biggest things that just grabbed me by I come from an old school Italian family, and when my grandmother would grab me by the neck, that concept has changed my life, because I now know when I feel panic and like I don't have choices, I know I'm regressed. It hits me now in a few minutes, what used to be days, could be weeks. So
regression is not a neurosis. It's not a psychosis. It's a part of the human condition. And you can never once and finally cure it what you can do is catch it before you do too much damage. You can, many regressions are going to equal regret. You're going to say something or do something that you might regret for days, weeks, or decades when you're in a regress state.
I told you off camera I wouldn't interrupt you unless you dropped a nuclear bomb, and that was the first one. Because for us, now let's make it real plain. For us that have had affairs, we understand we regret what we've done. Safe to say we were regressed when we were acting out or even started to act out. Now, please let the viewer and the listener understand, your friend Sam is never going to try and excuse infidelity and just say, oh, we were regressed. You're never going to hear that from John or myself. But when a betrayed says, you unfaithful need to go find out why you did what you did, wouldn't you agree that part of it would be understanding where we regressed, because it certainly has produced regret in our lives, right?
Right. Yeah, regress people equals, regret. I not lately. I mean, I've been working on this material and teaching it for nearly 30 years. But I remember one time, this is my best memory of when I regressed and got triggered. Right after I got married to Susan, maybe 6 months or something into it, she got sick for a few days. And I immediately started thinking to myself, oh my God, she's going to be like my mother, who was always sick. And I had to take care of it. And so I was being curt and crass and impatient. And she'd only been sick like 2-3 days. And I'll never forget, she just said, John, stop. I'm not your mother. I'll be up and about in a couple of days, But I realized that I'd projected my mother onto my wife, which is projection is a major form of regression. See, you're putting on this present person somebody from your past while you're in a regress state. And that's the way to say it, is regression is an unconscious, unintentional return to our histories. And the more we plumb those histories and attach the emotions to them, to those memories that we could not express back then, the less we'll go into a regress state.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was fantastic. The emotions that we could not express then. Because you said this, I'll tee it up for you because I thought it was such a hard-hitting statement that you said regression equals a feeling of choicelessness, right? Mm-hmm. Explain that.
Well, you hear it, I hear it, everybody here. Why don't you quit that job? I can't. I don't have a choice. Why don't you quit that bad marriage? I can't. I don't have a choice. Why, and what I realized early on is the only people on the planet that doesn't have choice is kids. They choose what you're going to wear, what you're going to eat, where you're going to go to school, what house you're going to live in, what religion you're going to pursue. It's just choiceless. So I got to hearing that, and I thought, every time somebody would say, John, I would, but I don't have a choice, I'd go, ding, 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 you're back in childhood. You're back in childhood. Because an adult who is in their prefrontal lobe, and that's a way to think about regression, is I leave my new brain and my prefrontal lobe, and I go to my amygdala, which I call the little brain that remembers everything.
Right.
And then gets triggered, and then I only have 3 choices: fight, flight, or freeze. But when I'm in an adult state, I can come up with 10 choices of almost about anything. But when I leave that new brain, I get triggered. I go, no, I got to stay in this marriage. Or no, I got to stay in this dead end job. And I go, we got to get you out of a regression. So you can see your choices.
Right. Because we can feel like my spouse is not going to hear me. They just keep shaming me. They just keep abusing me. I don't feel like I can have boundaries. I don't feel like I can hold them to expectations. I kind of deserve this. It is that feeling where we feel like we don't have a choice to maybe even stand up for ourselves because of childhood trauma.
Right.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah. One way to know that you're regressing is when you do stuff or say stuff or don't do stuff based out of duty, obligation, or guilt. Those are all red flags of regression. When you don't want to go help your aging mother do something, and you say that, and then I say, why are you going? Well, it's my obligation. That's regression. It's my duty. No, that's regression. See, guilt. No, that's my regression. Red flags of regression is what you can get really good at noticing. You know, one of my favorite red flags of regression is people start making up stories about what is happening, what's going to happen, what should happen. You know, your wife says, I'm going to Chicago and I'll call you when I get to my hotel at 10 o'clock. Well, 10 o'clock comes, no call. 10:15 comes, no call. You've had quite a bit of therapy, so you don't regress until 10:20, you know. And then you start dialing. And then you start wait a minute. My wife went to that business meeting with her boss. That's your red flag story. Or my son was supposed to be home from the dance at 12 o'clock. Well, at 12:30, mom and dad now are regressing. And the favorite saying down south for an indicator that they're regressing is, well, he must be wrapped around a telephone pole. Or even more famous than that is he's dead in a ditch.
Right, exactly.
Number one story, dead in a ditch.
That's exactly right. As I hate to say, point of disclosure, my son, who's now my youngest, who's in college one night, didn't check in. And I told him, hey, I'm really tired. I'm going to bed early tonight. I need you to be home by said time. He was not. And then his phone was dead. So on Find My iPhone, I had his last location. So I drove over there and just camped out in the front yard until he came out front, and he walked out with his buddies. And good old Sam was like, hey, how's it going? I'm not proud of that moment. I'm just being vulnerable with you, John. Again, we're not turning into a session.
See, an adult would say, if they're in their adult state, they go, well, something probably came up that my wife couldn't get to the hotel. I'm going to go to bed. We'll talk tomorrow. But, you know, if another sign of regression is being overly anxious about what's happening to others when you have no basis for it. But if you're regressed and your wife finally does call at 10:30, you're going to blow her out of the water. You know? Right. You said you would be calling at 10 o'clock. You know what time it is? I was waiting for you at 10 o'clock. Now it's 10:30. God damn it, can't you tell time? And then the wife says, oh, honey, the taxi had a flat.
Right.
And you scrape the egg off your face and say, oh, I was just kidding about all that other stuff I said.
You wrote this in your book. You said, you know, adults always have options. Of course, adults always have a choice, but you can't see it through regressed eyes. So as we talk about regression, how do we help our regressed eyes? What are some ways that people that are listening can go, okay, you got me, John, you got me, Sam. I'm walking in regression. I am returning to my childhood self when I was 10, when I was 12, the trauma that, and we're not making light of the things that you, myself, the listener, the viewer has been through. It's probably awful stuff. I've been through stuff I hate to even talk about, but I know where I could regress to that 11-year-old He's filled with a lot of abandonment and a lot of hurt and a lot of fear. And you spoke to that. So how does someone who says, I get this, how do they grow themselves up? What are some ways that they could start to grow themselves up as they start to wrap their mind around regression?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's 5 things that a person can do and participate in to help grow themselves back up. Number 1 is attention. You see, if I'm getting triggered around, say, my girlfriend or my fiance or whatever, then I'm going to call you, Sam, and I'm going to say, Sam, I'm feeling small. I'm feeling little. I'm feeling less than the powerful adult I know myself to be. And before I talk to my fiance and lose it with her, great sign of regression is when somebody says, oh man, me and my son were having a great talk. I don't know what got said, but boy, did I lose it. Well, what did you lose? You lost your adultness. You lost your prefrontal lobe. So you're going to say, well, tell me what's going on, John. And we're going to talk 5, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And I'm going to say, thanks for that good attention. I think I can have an adult conversation with my girlfriend or husband or whatever.
Fantastic.
Empathy. Number 2, empathy. While I'm talking to you about whatever's triggering me, you're going to say things like, I hear you. I'm sorry that happened to you. I know I've had that happen to me a time or two. You're going to give me great attention and great empathy. And you're going to give me an allotted amount of time that works for you so you don't regress and works for me. And you can say, now, John, I'm happy to keep listening, but I can only do it for 30 more minutes because I got an appointment. And so you're going to give me some of your time to give me time to grow back up. 4th thing is contact. Hand to shoulder contact, giving me a hug if you're, out on the porch and I'm getting triggered. Phone contact, any kind of contact mixed with time, empathy, and attention. So you put these 4 things together, you're going to get the 5th thing, which is release. You're going to be released from your regress state. See, you might cry a little bit, or you might laugh a little bit, but you're getting released from that contracted state. That's what you want to think about regression. Regression is contraction. I'm getting small, I'm getting little, I'm contracting around whatever issue is making me regress. Attention, empathy, time, contact releases me into expansion. Now I can figure out 5 different things I can do because I'm expanded enough.
That's fantastic. Would you agree that the goal, how James shared it with me was, and I want to pitch it to you, is that I learned if I could self-regulate, I could save myself so many consequences from just losing my mind and just and maybe I don't even act on them. Maybe I had something happen to me a month ago and I was so triggered and I was furious. I remember I walked downstairs and I did the paravagal nervous system kind of work. I put my hand over my chest and my hand over my belly and took some deep breaths. And I said, what does this feel like? And it took me 1 minute. My subconscious was like, this feels like betrayal from these guys and all that. And I was like, wouldn't you agree that the goal, the major league move, is to be able to self-regulate when we are in a regress state? Now, that does not mean that we shouldn't shoot for co-regulation. That's another major league move. But if we're by ourselves, shouldn't we try and really get to that point of individual self-regulation?
Sometimes it's important to let yourself go before you can self-regulate. So let's say you're really, really pissed off about something. Well, you go and you take like 2 overstuffed pillows and press it to your face, and you scream and yell and cuss for 2 minutes or 5 minutes.
You'll find never done that ever, John. That's for somebody else.
You'll find self-regulation comes faster than if that energy is still in you and you don't discharge and dissipate it. See? So sometimes you need to write a 2-page letter to your dad before you have that confrontational conversation with him and discharge some of that energy that's been there for 4 decades. Movement. One of the things that I teach, movement creates emotion. Sitting still does not create much emotion. Writing, singing, dancing, drumming, pounding, screaming, throwing. We have a thing in Austin. I haven't been to it, but I just heard about it. There's a catharsis room that you can pay, and you can bust up old televisions and plates and
rage
stuff.
Room. Yeah, rage room.
Yeah, you go.
Yes.
There you go. And there's those in a lot of major cities, just to get that 5-10 minute release and then go on about your business. So yeah, the one way to think of real deep regression is I have no emotional regulation. I don't even know what I could possibly be feeling. Regression is a way to sort of numb out temporarily until you can discover what you're really feeling.
So good. Yeah. So regression, we can regress to numb out. Would we say that's synonymous with avoidance or intimacy avoidance, or what do you think?
Absolutely. I used to, here's an example from my life. I remember when I would get ready to leave my first wife, we could be doing well. And an hour before she's to take me to the plane, I pick a fight so that I don't have to feel the missing, the longing, the fear, because now I'm going, to hell with her, or, maybe I won't come back. See, now that's just pushing it down, so that I won't feel. Now, I realized that was a regressive attempt to stunt my feelings about leaving and being gone for, 2 weeks or something to Australia or whatever.
Absolutely. I think it's so well put that it's tough to wrap our mind around, but we do those things. And I think it's so well said. I wanted to ask you this question because as we're winding down, I think so many people who struggle with feeling codependent on their partner, or some people call it narcissistic supply, where they need their partner to be okay so that they're okay. But in your book, you say regressed people are afraid to ask for what they want. Why is that?
Especially men.
Why is that? Help me. It's beautiful. Because I get it. I want to say I get it. It resonates with me, but why?
Because, Sam, you were brought into a culture, society that said, don't feel, don't talk, don't ask for help. And if you do any of those things, you're a pansy, you're weak, you're a pussy, whatever. And we get that at an early age. Son, now that guy that you fought with, did you give him as good as you got?
Right.
You didn't cry, did you?
Right.
But it becomes so entrenched. This is another story, man. I was about 38 years old, and by then I'd written this book. But I was getting ready to go to a day surgery to have a thing removed off my neck. My lady friend, just platonic friend, called and said, "What are you doing today?" I said, "Well, I'm going to the hospital and I'm going to have a little day surgery." And she said, "Well, who's taking you?" And I said, nobody. She said, nobody. I said, right. Well, what do you go? I said, I'll take a taxi. I'll get my surgery and I'll take a taxi back. And I'll never forget what she said. She said, John, you're an idiot. One of the ways you know you're regressing is when people bluntly tell you, John, you're an idiot.
Yeah.
Sam, you're an idiot. She said, I'm going to come over. I'm going to pick you up, take you. I'll stay with you during the surgery, bring you back home. I'll fix you something to eat. And what was the takeaway from that? It never occurred to me to ask somebody to take me.
Wow.
That stuff had been so deeply drilled. You don't ask for help.
Right.
And that if you do, it's a sign of weakness. And yeah.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And I used to be like that. And I remember my therapist said, I was kind of deflecting, and he said, you don't feel like you deserve to get help.
Right.
And I sat there and I mumbled a few cuss words. And then I shed a little tiny tear, and we have a great relationship. She said, I see you, Sam. And I was like, you're exactly right. I didn't like I deserved it. So, John, I just am so grateful and honored that you have come in. So if people want to learn more, if they want to study more about what you're talking about, besides this book that is what we've talked about, Growing Yourself Back Up, how do they find you? What other books should they read? How can they take this journey of regression to the next level?
Well, a few years ago, I wrote a book, Sam, called The Half-Lived Life. And the subtitle is Overcoming Passivity. And passivity is an extension of my work in this book, that passivity is a major sign of regression. And again, like regression, there's not a whole lot written on passivity, but that book is available, The Half-Lived Life. I'm here in Austin. Most of my clients I do online on video, nationally and internationally. But about, I guess, maybe now 5 months ago, 6 months ago, local people I'll let come to the house, to do sessions.
Sure.
So you can go to my website, johnleebooks.com, and you'll see blogs and other books and other information. Yeah.
I love it. I always do this little trick where I ask you on air because you'll look really bad if you say no, but I hope you'll come in again sometime soon. You can scold me for that later. That's not regression.
I'll be delighted, and I'm not. And because that's my choice.
Yeah. I'd like to invite your adult self to come back, but if I need to talk to that kid to make him come back in and feel like he doesn't have an option, I'll sure do it. But John, I'm so grateful. And for those of you that tuned in today, I hope that you did not feel 1 ounce of shame. I hope and pray that you did not feel 1 ounce of guilt for your own regression. We all regress.
Yeah.
We all have the opportunity. If I can help, if John can help, listen, you can email me at samshealingpodcast@gmail.com. You can leave a comment here. Man, if you want to reach out to John, listen, we're all about helping. We're all about getting you healthier. We're all about helping you grow yourself up. So thanks for tuning in. John.
Sam, you did it. You did a great job. Thank you for having me, and please invite me again sometime. Okay?
Oh, I'll hold you to it. I'll hold you to it. Thank you, John.
Take care, bud. Right. Bye-bye.
Bye.